18 months ago, I decided that I wanted to leave my safe corporate job to pursue creative media full time. And in that time, I've managed to build an audience of about 250,000 across all platforms and become the creative director of a top 25 football team. Now, this journey wasn't always amazing, and there were a lot of times when I really thought that I was going to fail, but through hours of hard work and maybe some foolish persistence, I managed to get to where I am now, and I know that you can do the same too. So for my first ever YouTube video, I figured it'd be kind of cool to go through the story of how I went from terrible 9 to 5 that I hated to full-time creative. So here we go. It all started about 18 months ago. I was working full-time in a hospital doing finance and operations. A lot of Excel work, a lot of stuff that I didn't really love. I always knew that I wanted a job in sports, and I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to get there, as I clearly am not built for being on the field. I had a little bit of a background in cameras, as I did a bunch of photography in high school, so I had a general idea of how a camera worked and how to work all the settings. I always saw people on Instagram and TikTok who were full-time sports photographers and videographers, and I was always really jealous of them, so I figured, why wouldn't I try to do the same thing? So the very first thing I did was I came right here to YouTube, and I watched probably 500 to 1,000 hours worth of YouTube videos on how to make a video, how to do better photography, what camera settings are, so on and so forth. I would wake up, go to work, come home, and then watch YouTube video after YouTube video, trying to learn how to get into this creative media space. After a couple of weeks, I had what I thought was a pretty good foundation in the actual physical settings part of the camera, but now I needed something to shoot. My younger brother Luke was a senior in high school at this point, so the first thing that I ever shot was his high school football senior season. I had a Canon M50 and 2 kit lenses, and that's it. I filmed the first couple of games on this setup, and I absolutely fell in love. I loved being on the sideline, I loved capturing the moments, I loved editing afterwards, and I loved posting on Instagram, even though I had about 210 followers at this point, and most of which were people that I knew. I decided that I really wanted to dive into this head first, and I invested in a Sony a7 III and a 70-200 f2.8. As I'm sure you can imagine, this left my bank account with not a whole lot left in it. However, once I purchased this camera, I did the exact same thing that I did before, and I learned every single thing that I could about it, and my content skyrocketed. The quality of all the content went way up, and the actual things I was able to capture with a real 70-200 millimeter lens were way better. At this point, I was absolutely hooked, and I was trying to do as much work as I possibly could for anybody who would let me shoot. I cold emailed probably hundreds of people asking if they would just let me shoot for free. Things like games, tournaments, championships, teams, individuals, any sport, anytime, any place, anywhere. For whatever reason, basketball is where I found the most traction, so I was able to shoot a bunch of D1 games, and I actually, through a connection, was able to work with an NBA player. Naturally, this is where my portfolio really started to grow. I now had maybe 10 different Division I games under my belt, and a portfolio full of photos and videos from all of them. And if this whole thing started in September of 2023, we're probably in about March of 2024 at this point. I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on things now, and now all I want in the whole world is a full-time job doing this. Because at the end of these shoots, I still have to wake up the next day and go to this job that I hate. So I took that portfolio, I perfected it and made it look as good as possible, and I started applying to jobs. I probably applied to anywhere between 500 and 1,000 jobs, and I think I heard back from 5 of them. I had a couple of interviews, one with the PGA, one with North Carolina, neither of which ended up working out. Unfortunately, I really thought I was going to get the PGA job, and then I didn't, which definitely was upsetting, but it is what it is. And at this point, I was almost ready to quit because I was convinced that I was never going to get this full-time job that I wanted. And that is when Army hit me up. I got an interview for an assistant video job with the Black Knights. And basically my job was to do all things creative video internally. I got an interview with the Black Knights, and the job was to do basically all things creative video on the internal side. So hype videos, practice recaps, so on and so forth. Now, at the time, was this exactly what I was looking to do? No, but did it give me an opportunity to be creative and shoot video for a high-level sports team every day? Absolutely. I still remember to this day exactly where I was sitting when I was called and told that I got the job. I almost started crying outside of the hospital that I worked at, but I held myself together. Once I signed that paperwork, I quit my job and I moved up to West Point about 2 weeks later. I did the whole football season as the internal video guy, and I just worked my ass off every single day trying to make the best videos possible for the team. When our season ended this January, I got promoted to creative director, and now I head up pretty much everything creative for the football team. And I've actually now hired somebody, so now I'm a manager also, which is pretty weird, but pretty cool. So with all that being said, I went from essentially zero experience to being a creative director at a top 25 program in about 18 months. And what we just went through is literally the blueprint on how you can do the same. You don't have to be gifted with some sort of set of skills. You just have to apply yourself and have the motivation to make yourself keep going, even when things look kind of grim. So there you have it. There's the story, and also my first YouTube video. Hopefully I'll look back on this one day and it's something to laugh about, but for now, I guess I'll just see you next week.